So, what if I told you that the very meditation practice you're using to find freedom could actually be building a more comfortable, more refined cage for your mind? It's a really subtle trap, one that's super easy to fall into, and it has a name: conceptual hardening.
Okay, so to get what this means, picture this. You're at a 10-day silent mindfulness retreat. A whole room of people who've dedicated over a week of their lives just to sit, to breathe, and to be aware. By day 7, the place is dead quiet. Everyone's moving slowly, mindfully. They're deep in the zone. But then someone new shows up and kind of disrupts the whole vibe. It's a woman, and she's on crutches. You can tell her leg is freshly broken, but she is determined to finish the retreat no matter what. But then, something really shocking starts to happen. During meals, she's trying to juggle her tray and her crutches. She's struggling with doors, and nobody helps her. These weren't mean people. They were meditators who were so focused on the idea of being mindful, they literally walked right past her, even letting doors swing shut in her face. And this brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. How is it possible? How can a room full of people who are trying so hard to be aware and compassionate become totally blind to someone who so obviously needs a hand? Well, according to the late psychologist and meditation master Daniel P. Brown, this wasn't some kind of moral failure. It was actually a symptom, a bug in the practice itself when it goes wrong. It's a specific kind of error he saw happen all the time. He gave it a name: conceptual hardening. It's what happens when your mind gets confused and mistakes the concept of mindfulness for the real, actual state of open awareness. You feel like you're practicing correctly, but what you're really doing is strengthening the very habits you're trying to get rid of. To really get this, you have to understand the difference between two types of awareness. First, there's ordinary awareness. This is what most mainstream mindfulness is about: training a calm, focused, inward attention. But then there's awakened awareness, which is this huge, boundless field that's actually always there, just hidden. The real danger is getting so good at the first one that you never even find out the second one exists. And Dan Brown put it pretty bluntly. He said that if you only practice ordinary mindfulness, you are literally hardening the mind. You're making that focused ordinary awareness so much your default mode that you completely stop looking for anything else. You're just perfecting a really calm cage. So, how does this actually happen? I mean, how does the mind build these conceptual walls right under our noses? It all comes down to a lightning-fast process that has a name: reification. Reification is just a fancy word for making something feel solid and real when it's just a mental event. It happens in 4 steps, super fast. First, some raw energy just pops up in your mind. Instantly, your mind grabs it, singles it out. Then it slaps a label on it, like anger or fear. And finally, it weaves a story around it, creating a solid me who is having this emotion. This is the mind's factory setting, and it happens faster than you can blink. Now, what's crazy is how this creates a totally modern paradox. I mean, the most advanced, supposedly secret teachings from traditions like Mahamudra and Dzogchen, you can just buy them on Amazon now. But the whole reason they were kept under wraps for centuries was to prevent exactly this conceptual hardening. For those of us who love to study and read, the temptation to try and think our way to awakening is huge, but it's the ultimate trap. So, if thinking our way through this is the problem, then more thinking is definitely not the solution. The antidote has to be a totally different way of knowing things. And that solution is what Brown called sharpened metacognitive awareness. Now that sounds academic, but it's simple. It's not thinking about your thoughts. It's the ability to directly see the process of your mind in real time. To be able to tell the difference between actually experiencing something and just analyzing it. And this is a great story about how he taught this. During his retreats, a student would go on this long, super detailed analysis of their meditation experience. And Dan wouldn't get into it. He would just cut right through it all with 4 simple words. This is a concept. He wasn't interested in the story. He was pointing at the mind's process of creating the story. So how can you spot this in your own practice? Well, you can just ask yourself some questions. Right now, am I analyzing what I'm feeling? Am I trying to figure out emptiness like it's a puzzle? Am I trying to get back to that awesome bliss state I had yesterday? Am I telling myself a story about my progress? These are all huge red flags that you've slipped out of direct experience and into thinking about the experience. Okay, so this all makes sense, but what do we actually do? How do we reorient our practice so we're not just polishing that little flashlight of attention, but turning on the lights for the whole room?
Let's circle all the way back to the woman on crutches. The reason she was completely invisible was that everyone in that room had spent days training a very powerful, but also very narrow, inward-facing flashlight of attention. They got really good at seeing what was happening inside their own heads, but that's where their world ended.
But see, awakened awareness isn't a flashlight you have to point at things. It's more like someone just flipped the light switch for the whole room. Everything is just illuminated, effortlessly. In that kind of awareness, you wouldn't need to find the woman with your attention. She would just be there, a totally unmissable part of the whole bright scene.
A really beautiful way to think about this is the sun and clouds metaphor. The sun, that's awakened awareness. It is always shining. Our thoughts, our concepts, our stories, they're just clouds passing by. The whole point of practice isn't to polish the clouds or arrange them into nicer shapes. The real work is learning to see past them to the sun that has been there all along. And so that leaves us with a really good question to ask ourselves honestly. Is your practice actually helping you clear the clouds, or have you just gotten really, really good at rearranging them? The insights we've talked about in this explainer are all based on the life's work of Daniel P. Brown and his incredible pointing out the Great Way teachings. He provided us with an amazing map, but it's always good to remember that a map isn't the journey itself. For that, finding a qualified teacher can make all the difference.